Oh, man, it was tied as of a second ago, but playoff bound is the winner as of right now, unless somebody votes again. But only two Vols making the preseason All-SEC teams. To you, that means, well, about half of you say target the 2025 playoff. The other half, a little more than half, nothing. Doesn't mean a thing. We're playoff bound this year. All right, very good. So 92% basically aren't that worried about it. Okay. Greg Sankey was asked about expansion this week. He dodged the topic, as every good conference commissioner does, in order to avoid lawsuits. You can't come out and say, man, Clemson looks great. So he said, we are focused on our 16. SEC sources spoke with Brett McMurphy, longtime reporter, very good reporter, and he wrote that they all told him that the league is happy at 16, and specifically they don't want Florida State, okay? And he was told they don't want Florida State because Florida State hasn't been a good partner in the ACC, and the SEC is already in the state of Florida. And I've seen a lot of people repeat that and go, aha, they're not a good partner, and the SEC is already in Florida. So there. And I'm sitting there thinking, who's the worst partner in the history of conferences? That's Texas, and the SEC was already in Texas when they brought Texas in. So my question to you guys, all this talk is the fact that they're not interested, they're not looking, and I believe that. I believe they're not looking. All that goes out the window the minute the ACC collapses, in my opinion. Do you guys agree that they're going to keep we only want 16? We're focused on if the ACC blew up tomorrow, isn't the SEC getting involved there?
Without question. And part of it is that I think the SEC is fine until the ESPN tells them they're not fine. So how much money does Florida State bring in? Is it enough to add $80 to $90 million per year to the conference? And if they did, then the SEC would probably want to take them. If you're ESPN right now and you hold all of the rights to SEC's games, you already have Florida State's rights for $35 million a year. Why would you hand them $80 million per year to come into the SEC, right?
Well, yeah, that tells me ESPN isn't going to try and blow up the ACC. Now, they've got a look-in coming up here, I guess, in a year or 2 years where they can kind of nuke that deal they've got. But I don't think they're going to. But here's the thing. If Florida State wins their lawsuit, then it's out of ESPN's hands.
It is. So. And then they probably go to the Big 12. So it's a possibility. What's what people were saying this week.
Yeah.
I do think that I don't think the ACC is going anywhere because if Florida State and Clemson could get out of their contract, they would get out of their contract and they would be out right now. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think ESPN holds those rights for 50 cents on the dollar. And I think the SEC can want them or not want them. They're going to do what the broadcast partner tells them to do. And so I think they're happy now, but that can change the second ESPN changes it.
Although here's the thing about the broadcast partner. ESPN wasn't happy. I mean, I don't think they gave them the marching orders to go get Texas and Oklahoma because they're not paying them for an extra game. So I get what you're saying, that it's all about the TV running it. I think the TV networks are also as screwy right now as the conferences are. Because if you're ESPN, you're looking at it and you're saying it's going to be Fox, NBC, CBS versus us. All right, we need as many good games as we can get. We don't want to just be 16 teams and everybody else, the other 50 are in this Big Ten thing. It'd be interesting. Ryan, what's your take?
Yeah, well, first of all, Greg Sankey's saying what he has to, as you said.
Yes.
It's you're avoiding lawsuits. You're never interested until it's already the wheels are already in motion, basically. Yeah. So they're not, nothing's imminent. I think that's maybe the point to look at right now is that all this is going to take some time to play out. They've got to figure out what's going to happen with the ACC. That lawsuit gets resolved and everything starts moving. The SEC is going to be interested still, but the Big 12 stuff sounds more believable right now. I mean, honestly, I'm not sure the SEC is desperate to go down that road, but again, this to me is all a standoff between the SEC and the Big Ten.
Yes,
if they get the idea that the Big Ten's moving elsewhere, they're going to move on Florida State and Clemson. That's where I think this is going.
I think that's what the Big Ten did when you added Texas and Oklahoma. They suddenly go get USC and UCLA. Then the Pac-12 blows up, so they're like, okay, we'll take Oregon and Washington at a discount rate. I do think, though, that the SEC, if they're looking at it and they think the Big Ten's going to do something, I think they're going to do something. Yep. The interesting thing is, at some point, I said last week 2036. It's 2034. The rights would have to remain with the ACC if Florida State or Clemson left. If you got private equity money coming into the Big 12, which is what it looks like they're going to do, you may be able to say, here's your money.
We'll pay the grant of rights.
Yeah, and you just pay us back. Yeah. And that way Florida State and Clemson are out of there, and they're making more, so they're paying that off. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
One thing to watch, and this is just a thesis of mine, Texas A&M's clearly not happy right now.
Yeah.
They did nothing at media days. They're ever talking to people who cover them. They are super not happy. If they had got a Big Ten invite, I think they take it right now, and then does the SEC add teams after that?
It's funny. I was reading a guy who writes for Gig'em. I think that's 24/7, right?
Yeah.
I've read his stuff for years, and his take was, why do people keep saying this? He said, I talked to no one inside the administration who wants to leave the SEC. But the smoke is out there, certainly. One thing I think is funny is, and this gets back to, well, Sankey said this. I'm amazed at how many people in the media take somebody's statement and then say, well, here it is. It was handed down. Man, I went up to Mount Sinai. They handed it to me. There it is. We're done. And I mean, I saw somebody, there's some guy now who's learned, it's a radio guy that I've never heard of, who has now learned I can be big every week by just saying, okay, expansion's happening July the 20th.
Hey, the guy in Oklahoma.
Greg Swain.
Yeah, yeah.
And this week he said, well, okay, the Big 12 is going to go after this 6 teams. And 400 other media people to get the clicks talk about Greg Swain. I'm like, who the hell is Greg Swain? I've never heard of you. If it's Brett McMurphy, I know Brett McMurphy.
Chip Brown has been in the front of some of this, right?
Yeah, if I were doing this and somebody was in Oklahoma, I would expect them to say, who the hell is John Pennington?
Yeah.
If I came out here and didn't just say, I think this could happen, I think this could happen, but I reported, oh yeah, it's going to be these 6 teams. Really? Who the heck are you? And yet that stuff just gets kicked around the internet as though it's fact. So anyway, I find that amusing. When we come back, true or false, Nico Iamaleava's brain is going to be more important to Tennessee than his arm or his legs. Let's discuss.